everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at the new book from Fantagraphics, I Am Young by M. Dean. This is an interesting book. It's something that kind of unveiled itself to me. It has some mechanisms in it that I had to get a hang on before I could understand the book. So I feel like in the early part of the book, I was missing out a little bit on what was going on. And then as I got a sense of how the book worked better, as I went, I trained myself on the mechanics of the book, then I got to know it better. So this is interesting in that sense. It's definitely something I'd want to revisit. It's just a little bit hard for me because the topic of the book isn't exactly something that's compelling to me. So what the book is a story about two people who meet because of their obsession with the Beatles, and then they have a lifelong strained relationship that they go through that's tracked, and it usually syncs up. They'll meet back up when some major event with the Beatle happens. So that's pretty straightforward. What's confusing about it is, as you can see, I'm flipping through, it looks like a collection of short stories at first. So you get this here, you get this first section here that's called Joni. Now, going back, I realized that this is related to a song, that this is a Cab Calloway song. So I think some of this would be if you, were really invested in all of the artists that the artist is invested in, this book would probably be richer, because I am aware of these artists, but not huge fans of any of the musical artists that are mentioned here. Maybe it's less impactful for me. Also, I'm not quite sure how they all add up. So this is the story here, obviously titled after the song by Cab Calloway, and it's people talking about Cab Calloway. Now, I would have to go back to see if some of these characters show up, or how if these are influences on the Beatles. I just feel like I'm missing out something a little bit. So then we get to the next one, which is about the Beatles, and my assumption as I'm reading is, okay, now we've got a short story about the Beatles. Also, quite confusing is at the very beginning here, you have this, what appears to be handwritten letter from one person to another, and it's always kind of split from the top and the bottom. So you'll read the letter and then you'll read what's going on. So that's already a lot of information to kind of juggle. You're trying to keep the track of the narrative in the letter, but it's being split up quite a bit. And so you're constantly getting these breaks in the narrative that made it a little harder to go keep track of. So I think it would be useful to go back and read just the letters and just the dialogue. I think this book could be read in a couple of different ways, and different things would expose themselves, which is good, but you got, like I said, you got to train yourself on it. So these are the main characters of the book. I would say this is Miriam and George, and I don't know if Miriam is M. Dean. I'm not sure, but this seems to have an autobiographical component. I also feel strangely I've seen a couple books. I know there was one, I'm pretty sure there was one that came out from Nobrow that I haven't seen yet, that was also someone's relationship with the Beatles. I feel like this is the third or fourth book I've seen where this is a memoir related to the Beatles in the last year or so. So I don't know, is there some, I'm not a big Beatles fan. I honestly don't. I mean, I don't dislike them, but I don't like them either. I get their importance, but it's just hard to enjoy something based on its importance rather than its actual quality. And that's always held me back from the Beatles. So I just don't know. This is an anniversary. Why is everyone coming back to the Beatles right now? I'm curious. But anyways, I'm assuming Miriam is probably the author of the book. This seems like an autobiography in some way. Now, there's also George, so that makes this extra confusing because she meets George outside of a Beatles concert, and I really, really like the look of the design here with all this extra dialogue and stuff. And they're like, hey, isn't the Beatles so good? What's your favorite song? Blah blah blah. They had gone to a show. The character being named George gets extra confusing because at one point in the book, I thought, wait, is this a biography of George Harrison? Again, I don't know enough about the Beatles, so is Miriam someone that he was related to? I don't know. So that got confusing, even though it's obviously not. Now, then at the end here, okay, this is a Miriam K, so definitely not M Dean. But the thing that you realize only at the end of this first chapter, and that took me a couple more chapters to really latch onto, is that the writing up top is Miriam's and the writing at bottom is George's, and that can switch. And so I've been reading these as a connected statement, and really they're two different letters being written, and you don't get a visual cue of that in the beginning. You just get, when I saw you, it was love at first sight, and then it says, when I first saw you, it was love at first sight, where sight spelt wrong. And I guess you could be paying attention to that it's two different handwritings as well. But it's pretty, like, you know, when I was reading it, I just wasn't paying attention to those kind of things. It feels like you could change my world. It feels like my whole life has changed. So those things could be read pretty easily back to back. Sometimes I feel so much I can't even think. I'm sorry I got so nervous before. So it's really easy to read that unless you're paying attention to the fact that it's different lettering, but they're both like scripts, so it's not like one's, I think if one had been like handwritten and one had been more of a script, it would have jumped out. But I think the font's similar enough that until you get here, you don't realize it's anything different. So then you come to Baby Fat here, and we're looking at another artist, this somebody Arnold. Again, you know, some of the musicians are not people that I listen to. And then you get like this storybook kind of proposal here of people running away to a wedding in Vegas. So I think what's happening here is, then this is supposed to be a biography of the one character all the way through, but I don't think they refer to her as Miriam in these other ones. So I don't know what these are asides about, but this is an aside about someone getting married at a very young age. I'm trying to see as I'm flipping through whether there's a name given here, but it might just be constructing someone's life around the music that they listen to. You know, the big moments in their life attached to music, which definitely makes sense. You know, my music is definitely connected to my life in a very tight way. But yeah, see, this is a character named Roberta, so it's not the Miriam K. So then it starts to just look like a kind of kaleidoscope of short stories about people's relationships to music, which makes sense. Okay, I got that. We get some really cool imagery, especially in this section here, like with these gridded panels. You know, these are very musical. I really like the 3 and 3, so it's very like a waltzy kind of look here. But then it comes out into 12 in the end, so it's like on a 4 grid as well. You know, there's musical stuff embedded in it. Like here, this really appeals to me. This is very similar to things I want to do and things I'm thinking about with pattern and texture and music and rhythm and stuff like that. So some really beautiful visuals. But then we jump back into Miriam and George, and I was like, oh, okay, wait, this is all one interconnected story now, apparently. And again, you have the letter going at the top and bottom, and you kind of have them dating through their youth and then moving in together later. And that this is where I really started to think, oh, okay, like maybe this is a book about George Harrison, because during this, the character, you know, plays music. He seems to be in a band, and that seems to be kind of, you know, like what's breaking them apart. So I thought, oh, maybe this is like a strange biography of George Harrison. Then we switch here to Decca, another artist I don't recognize, and you get this story here, which again, I quite like the more colored moments in the book rather than the black and white moments in terms of the art. Really cool page here with just this whole spread of stuff and this big long like blah 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 blah. But these are some pieces that are some people that are collaborating in an artistic project. Oh, Tom Jones is who they're referencing. Okay, again, see, just people I don't listen to. Really nice right here. Just like circular. I guess this is now KM is in this one, so this is. I don't know. See, going through it, it's still, I'm confused about how the characters relate. But some really cool formal stuff where we got a loop right here. I guess KM is now in a relationship with RP in this one. I don't remember the names out of this, but very cool formal loop here. So you get one of those, some really cool stuff, and then you get a. Oh, we jump right into another break. So this is Strange Magic, the Beach Boys. This one I knew, they reference Pet Sounds. I really like the visuals here where they're talking about the psychedelic nature of getting lost in the music. I definitely really quite enjoy that. So even though like a lot of the Beach Boys I like, Beach Boys is like my favorite band as a kid. Even though a lot of the music in here is not stuff that lands for me, the relationship with music throughout the book really lands for me, and I can connect to it in that way. So that's cool that there's that connection across, whether you know the artists or not. But there is a lot of just confusion for me about how exactly this is intended by the artist to hold together as a piece. Usually when I'm trying to critique a piece of work, I'm looking for, what is it I think the artist is up to and how well do I think they accomplish that. Here, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's all supposed to be related to Miriam and George in their relationship or if it's supposed to be just a celebration of how music influences people's lives. If it's the first, I need more about how these interstitials relate to the main characters. If it's the second, then I feel like it was a mistake interspersing this larger story. Like that could have been in the middle or something. It just creates a bit of confusion. So that's where it gets hard for me to critique. I can say I had a pleasant time reading it. I can say that I really connected about the love for music and all of that. And I think that's generally what the artist is trying to get across, but I don't know what the kind of deeper intention is. Here's a piece about the Carpenters. We got a shout out to AC/DC. I think visually this is my favorite section of the book, with some like simple color schemes, but all attached to lines and flat shapes. I think stylistically, yeah, this is the most compelling part of the book. Here we have another section about Chuck Berry. And then we come back to here you see Miriam and George later in life. And I guess this is a new book, so I shouldn't give it all away. But spoiler alert, I do want to talk about the ending of the book because I think that this is a type of ending that's pretty popular in a lot of movies and stuff I've seen, a lot of romance stories, and I've always hated this type of ending. I know other people seem to think it's really kind of bittersweet or something, but I just always hated these endings where people have had a long, deep relationship but have broken apart and then see each other later in life and like can walk away from it content. Maybe I'm just not like that. I don't want to say self-satisfied, that's not the word, but maybe I'm not comfortable enough in myself to like lose a relationship and then still be able to be that pleasant about it. There's definitely been relationships I've been in that ended on friendly terms and it could be like this, but to have a tortured pain ending to a relationship and then be able to have this kind of moment to it, that's just a sentiment that's very, very unfamiliar to me. And it really, really wasn't until later in the book that I was picking up on this Dear George, Dear Miriam thing that's going on in these sections. So I was kind of reading the book the wrong way some of the time as well, just because of the confusion about how this works. But anyways, a book that's compelling, a book that's interesting, a book that has a lot of beautiful moments in it, but a book that I think ultimately, at least in my experience, doesn't make it clear what exactly it's trying to do. I get the theme, I get what it's trying to talk about in general, but I don't get what it's trying to say or do with that theme, and I don't know if the artist cares about that at all or not, but it's, it left me a little hesitant about it. Actually, here you see the moment. This is, it looks like he's seen George Harrison in a grocery store, probably, now that I look at it. This is where I got a little bit confused because it looked like a Beatle to me. I think here he's seen someone he likes and is being excited about it. But I got a little bit confused, like, oh, this is a story about George Harrison, because but I don't know, they met at a Beatles concert and she's got a Beatles poster. So it should have been obvious to me, but I think the similarity of the name and all that, it just and just the confusion of all this different mechanics of how the book worked, I got a little lost in all of that. So probably on a second read would make more sense because I understand the mechanics of the book. I think it's brave to just let a reader figure that out as they go. You might lose a lot of people on the way that way, but the people who stick around will probably get the most out of it. So I think this artist took a lot of risks. I think they failed in some regards and succeeded in some others. If you have a connection to the Beatles or to a lot of these artists, then this would probably be a really enjoyable book. But you know, I'm a kid that I'm born in the '80s and really wasn't aware of pop culture till the '90s, and you know, I'm more interested in like progressive music and metal than I am like, you know, pop rock stuff. So just all of this kind of lineage of pop doesn't do much for me. So I think people who are more invested in that would make a lot out of this book. But the musicality of the layouts and the art was really nice for me. I think more of this kind of stuff would have been cool throughout as well. This is one of the things that sold me on it was the beautiful cover. So anyways, that's kind of what I think. This is one that I have a hard time recommending, but I wouldn't say it's like a bad book either. It's just one of like, does it look like it's for you? Then definitely go get it. If not, you know, then you'll probably be where I'm at, being like, yeah, that was nice, but whatever. So anyways, that's I Am Young by Ian Dean, newly out from Fantagraphics. Hope you enjoyed the review. If you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel and you want to support us, there's two ways to do that. The first one is through our Patreon. We have two different tiers of engagement there. At the first one, you just get early access to our videos. At the second one, you can get exclusive previews of the books that Sean and I are working on, some of our private work, and also the ability to participate in our ongoing Prane Day web strip, which is an experiment, a Groundhog Day experiment in AI that our patrons help vote to determine what happens next in, so you can take part in that. Any of the money that we get from the Patreon just goes back into buying the books that we review, so we just turn that back into other creators, other publishers' pockets, and keep you in a steady stream of things to consider, so we appreciate help in that regard. If you want to support Living the Line itself, the best thing to do is to support what Sean's doing with Living the Line Publishing. So we'll go ahead and take a look at one of Sean's books now. Centralia is an awesome, gorgeous comic by rising Dutch star Neil Van Peet. This is his first work. It's a really great sci-fi story. There's a world in the future where the sun has gotten so hot that people can't be on the ground, so they have to run around. There's a lot of conceits that go with that. You know, what is the world that looks like? And I think you can see by the art that Sean's description of this book as like a Moebius for young adults, a YA Moebius, is a really great description of this really gorgeous and like wild, wacky, fun book. Thanks for following along.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get